Hello and welcome back to HateWatchers for our coverage of the final episode of this second season of The Rings of Power, episode 8, entitled Shadow and Flame. Without further ado, let's get right into the breakdown, which means spoilers ahead. We kick things off in the Halls of Stone, where Prince Doran finds Lizzo checking corpses for food, which turns the chunky Prince Doran on, so he kisses his wife and it's gross, and I don't blame Narvi for looking away. Doran of the Prince variety confronts Doran of the King variety, telling him to take off his bling, but when his dad calls him his ginger mistake, Prince Doran breaks down. Undeterred, the king breaks through the wall, revealing a massive chasm laden with mithril, which he says is the perfect place for his next ditty party, but only people with a ring of power will be allowed in. But this flaming Balrog shows up to the party early. Doran finally removes his bling ring to do king things, and names his son the new king before leaping toward the beast of shadow and flame, while Prince Doran is yelling, "Hold me back! Hold me back!" Then we hop over to Rune, where this dementia patient thinks he's at a petting zoo, groping the horses and looking at the turtle. But then the Dark Wizard emerges, claiming to know the stranger and telling him that the halflings, the ones with a knife to their throats, they're safe. One of the raiders asks the Dark Wizard how much he pays for his Just for Men, but he ends up paying the price for his insensitive question, and the Dark Wizard tries to tell everyone it's natural. In the background, the sassy queen takes issue with some of the terms being thrown around.
Dark Wizard.
But he claims he's not a Dark Wizard, and the Harfoots are like, well, we've known you for 10 seconds, and in that time you killed a guy, so... The Dark Wizard once again showcases his short temper, bringing the house down on the little people, but the stranger uses his power to help some escape. Over in Numenor, Pharazôn has fresh new evidence that the queen cheated at her trial, and that evidence is a piece of paper that just says Sauron did it, LOL, and this is enough of a pretext to round up all of the faithful. Even the Leaves are trying to escape the city as Ozempic Face warns her father, before stalling a guard by being such an annoying bitch that he leaves. Elendil gathers up the blind queen to flee the city, but she can smell the writing on the wall and refuses to leave. But she gives him a souvenir to remember his time here. Meanwhile, the orcs have breached Eregion and are sacking the city when one faceless elf tries to pull off his best Legolas, but he fails. Galadriel, on the other hand, is incapable of failing, as her foes all conveniently turn their back or expose their bellies for her. But she and the other she-elves are cornered by the orcs, who ask for one reason to spare her, and she says, "I'll give you two," as she starts to open her blouse. Up in the tower, Celebrimbor is growing concerned after Sauron told him he was only going to try and shoot an apple off his head. Celebrimbor has battered woman syndrome, and even when Sauron is trying his hardest to lift up his former partner, he won't give up the rings. Both of the men have a good cry as Sauron watches Celebrimbor die, and the orcs are like, ooh. This is a bad time. We travel to Pelargir, where Isildur is thinking of ending it all when Theo comes in and reminds Izzy about his dead mother. Good timing. Then Estrid visits to drop off a wad of used tissues, a gesture so romantic that they kiss, and he invites her to Numenor. Kemen shows up, and after the show pays homage to Beric for once again being the best actor in this show, Isildur says he wants to bring his new tramp with him, but her fiancé Todd is being really weird about it. And when Kemen calls Estrid a Numenor 3, Isildur goes after him. Galadriel is brought to Adar, who's doing lines off this rock, and he reveals that he's gotten engaged to himself, and all the engagement and the cocaine look good on him. But she makes a deal to team up with Adar in exchange for her ring back, and she's relieved to see that he looks like shit again. She can't have someone looking better than her on her wedding day after all. The sensitive orc is brought back on a stretcher, but it's a trap as he stabs Adar before they go all Julius Caesar on him, and Galadriel's like, what the fuck, dude? Suddenly, Sauron teleports behind her and takes Morgoth's crown, while Adar meets his grisly end, and after about 35 seconds of stabbing and the Dark Lord showing up, Galadriel still hasn't tried to do anything. Finally, she grabs a sword and tries to do something, but he stops her with the crown and compliments her recent re-engagement to herself. But then they sword fight and she gets sliced in the fallopian. Eregion burns while the captive King Gil tries to hide his ring now that he's in the hood. Elrond pleads with an orc, saying please don't burn that pile. That's all the stuff we really value, so they burn it even harder. High King Gil-galad calls the orcs something I can't say here, and they take him down, but Elrond breaks free and finds the most flammable orc. The sword fight continues as Galadriel kicks him off a ledge and does a superhero landing, but is stopped dead in her tracks when Sauron emerges without his wig. But nothing could prepare her for Sauron's next trick, as he emerges as the biggest Karen Sue in the galaxy. And I called it. Galadriel's overjoyed that she can now actually finally marry herself. Before Galadriel can drag herself to the altar though, her dreams are dashed as he's now turned into Celebrimbor. Eventually we work all the way back to Anatar, who offers Galadriel an alliance once more, but she Chuck Norrises him in the face like the strong independent girl boss she is. Then she cuts his cheek and he responds by stabbing her with the crown, which she looks like she kinda likes. The actress resorts to the blinking thing that she thinks is emotions, and Sauron shows Galadriel his pull-out game, which leaves her floored, and he takes the rings. The dwarves arrive in Eregion, and Sauron goes too far when he asks Galadriel for her ring, which would mean canceling her wedding. So she pulls the oldest fake out in the book and says, "Too slow, chump," before she trips and falls off a cliff behind her. Glug comes in and tells Sauron he should come down and see all the little dwarves trying to fight them like people. It's hilarious. But Sauron is not in the mood. The elves find Galadriel, who's quickly succumbing to her tainted wound, but Elrond plans to save her by using her own jealousy, so he takes Nenya and he proposes to himself. Elsewhere, Nori is trying to rebuild southern Lebanon when Poopy comes up and tells her not to, and that there's honor in quitting and leaving things broken in some monologue with a terrible message. Elsewhere, Todd is getting handsy with Estrid as Isildur is forced to watch as he sails to Numenor, where the blind queen is now a slave like a reverse Beyonce song, and Elendil is fleeing the city like the hero that he is. Meanwhile, Sauron is trying to look tough with this little toy hammer. The stores pack up and leave their broken village, and a few of them call the stranger Grand Elf, which, with all the sand in his ears, he mishears as Gandalf, and that's the stupid-ass way he gets his name. Nori goes off to lead the stores in their first migration and leaves the dementia patient here alone, but he finds a walking stick to his liking and heads off in search of some bitches to spin around his new pole. But first he stops by Tom Bombadil's shanty so they can sit around and sing a song about Tom, which is weird because he's right there and he's singing about himself. And we get one last shot of the Dark Wizard we still know nothing about. Galadriel awakens just in time for the High King to absolutely destroy her.
I've never known you to be such peaceable company. I believe I was growing accustomed to it.
With evil growing in the land, the elves must choose the sword and attack, or the shield and strengthen their defense. And the elves choose the sword, and Galadriel slowly inches forward to feel like the people are cheering for her as the episode and the season come to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch. And it wouldn't feel right to end this season on anything but a hate watch. The episode does earn the label though, because while I thought this was one of the stronger episodes this show has had, there's still just too much dumb writing that presents us with things that don't make much sense at all, happening at every turn just to keep the story moving. Like Galadriel jumping off a cliff that Sauron, at the height of his powers, can't stop or counteract. Meanwhile, Gandalf, the dementia patient who was essentially born a couple weeks ago, is lifting fallen mountains of stone. Or the Númenóreans being thrust into chaos and potentially a civil war because a piece of paper was produced and people just go along with it. Or Arondir having no visible impairments despite his multiple stab wounds at the hands of Adar about 14 minutes ago. Also, it's pretty lame when the two dwarves are talking about emotional strength and it just devolves into talking about arm wrestling. That really makes it hard to feel the emotional weight they're going for in some of those scenes. And the Stranger's arc cemented itself as the stupidest storyline the show's given us so far. Gandalf is thrust into this story way before his canonical arrival in Middle-earth, just to hook viewers who want a familiar character from The Lord of the Rings. And he goes on a 2-season-long walk to reach some stars where he gets his name, which could hardly have come about in a dumber way, and his walking stick. Talk about a waste of time. If that's all he was going to be doing these first 2 seasons, then he didn't even need to be in the first season, which just reaffirms the idea that his inclusion is little more than nostalgia bait. At least Celebrimbor and Anatar's storyline came to a harrowing, satisfying end. That was the best thing this show had to offer this season, and it was also better than anything from Season 1. The Battle of Eregion over the last 2 episodes has been alright as well. It helped distract from some of the show's shortcomings. But we still don't have confirmation about who totally not Sauron is. The Dark Wizard might be a blue wizard, but most signs are pointing toward this being Sauron, which totally undercuts his later relationship with Gandalf in the films, so who knows? And who cares at this point? Anyway, Season 2 is officially in the books. What did you think about this season finale? Is there anything in here that could possibly pique your interest in seeing a third season? Let us know in the comments below. Remember to like the video if you liked it, and be sure you're subscribed to HateWatchers to catch our season wrap-up videos with the complete season review and a video of the funniest clips and scenes from this season of the Rings of Power. Thank you for practicing your pull-out game with us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.